Okay, everybody, welcome to the special council meeting, City of Cross Lake, Monday, February 26th. It is 6 p.m. Let's get started. I guess I want to make a little announcement here. We're going to get a presentation from our engineer and the county on the road project. And we don't want to have a lot of public comment. We're going to try to just march through this information. Somebody has just got a dire need to say something, but the ship has left the dock. So, that being said, let's get started. First, we got to approval of the Brainerd J.C. application for temporary on-sale liquor license for March 16th, St. Patty's Day.
I'll make a motion that we approve the temporary on-sale liquor license for March 16th through the Brainerd J.C.'s.
I'll second that.
Why is the address listed as the Old Judy's Gift Shop?
Where?
That is where they are going to set up.
So they're going to come and cross the street with open drinks on Highway 3, coming back and forth to the parade in those grounds. I don't think that's a very safe or effective thing to be having go on. I'm not in favor of that at all.
Okay, any other discussion? Go ahead, Char.
Marcia,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Aaron,
No.
Sandy,
yes,
motion carries 4-1.
Okay, next, Tim Bray and Phil Martin are going to give us a presentation.
Hey, I don't want to steal your thunder, Phil. Let's see, TJ is going to bring up a presentation. Well, thank you, first of all, for setting up a special meeting. I wanted to have your undivided attention about this. This is really important. We've been working on this for a couple of years, a lot of really intense discussions about these in public meetings, and tonight is really a big milestone that we're asking for. Actually, we have 3 council actions. I'll get to them in a second. Next slide. Yeah, next slide. So just
Push, Tim, push.
here's just kind of the outline. I do have a number of slides and we can get through them fairly quickly, I think. I'm just going to do an introduction. I'm going to go through the layout again, the project cost summary, which I'm sure you're interested in, and construction phasing and detour. We'll talk a little bit about that. Steve will come up, talk about that. And then we'll get into the requested council actions. I have 3 of them tonight. And then project updates. There's a handout I provided, and it's on the back table for those in the crowd to sign up for updates. And then questions. I have a spot for questions. So next slide. Oh, introduction. First, I want to just say a thank you to Phil and Andrew here and Steve. They've really been taking the technical stuff, and I've been driving them crazy. And they're smiling, but I don't think they were always smiling. We've been really trying to get this project and get the most out of it, and it required going backwards a few times and evaluating some of the things that came up in the public, and it drove them mad, and I want to recognize that.
Sorry, is this Steve here?
Yeah, this is Steve Strohschein. Steve Strohschein is going to be our project engineer on the ground. So he supervises our engineering technicians who will do the testing and monitoring the contractor's work and stuff like that. So he's quite experienced.
You're going to be on site, be a familiar face out there.
Yep. Yeah. So he, as a matter of fact, this last year, he was the one that was he designed and then built the roundabout in Crosby on the trunk highway system. So he's very familiar with working with the communities and the business owners, and then also that roundabout. So that's Steve Strohschein. He'll come up in a second here. The next, just quickly go over some project milestones way back to where the grants were. We have 1.81 million for this project, and I'm still looking. Still looking for some opportunities. We'd recently got another 85,000 from Bowser to help out with the water quality stuff, and actually the FLAP grant, I was able to recognize, get some of the contingency that they set aside, so another $50,000 there.
So
Not the grant number, but the other stuff may, and I'll get into that in a second. The other milestone, taking direction from the council and the county board on a roundabout, the decision to utilize the parking lane on the east side. Of course, the aesthetic decisions that you recently gave us about no concrete boulevard, and then also more of a standard light with a few upgrades. And then parking lot green space, that came out of your Cross Lakers representative who, Jonathan, I'm surprised he's not here. He brought that forward and we were able to advance that into something that you'll see in the layout. And then the community school requests, we were able to incorporate one onto Swan Drive, but the turn lane just was not feasible, and it actually would have really caused a bunch of delays for the project too. We might even be into next year. It was that involved. And then we also made a decision a few months ago, actually, that we would oversee construction. In the original contract with Phil and Bolton Mink, we were going to have their inspectors out there doing that work. And we thought it was, when we entered into the contract with them, or we asked them to look at the contract, we didn't think our staff we would have the staff time to do it. And now we do. We got a little bit farther in a couple other projects, so we can do it with our staff. And some of the extra design stuff, our design costs were getting up there, so we decided to take it on and internally and maybe do it a little bit cheaper. Okay. Next slide. Now the layout review, and this is where you can push. Now this is where so I have the layout up here. I didn't know any way to do it. I know the file that TJ's going to scroll through here is really clunky because it's so large and detailed, and we'll do our best. Right there on that screen, right there, you can see that box right there where his hand's just above there. That's going to be the temporary access to the campground. And so that's a temporary easement that we are working out with the Corps of Engineers to be able to get the campers in and out. That will be their ingress and egress while we're building the roundabout in phase one. Okay, moving up. This is the historic village there. What you see, the gray one to the right there, that's a relocated entrance kind of to the southern part of their parking lot. When Phil and I were talking with them, they felt very concerned about preserving the arch that's been there forever that says the historic village. So we propose that we just provide the sidewalk entrance into that area there, keep the arch there, and move the entrance down a little bit. So I think the last time we talked to them, they were quite happy about being able to preserve that. And then, of course, the roundabout, of course, it's oval about. And the reason why that was so important, it was to stay out of the Memorial Garden on the Corps of Engineer properties, and then also do the best we could to preserve the parking in Andy's parking lot. You'll see it wasn't too invasive on the chamber side. In the upper right on that one, we got into the core properties, kind of where the flags are and that kind of stuff, and Corrine, who I don't think is here either, we worked with her on that, and she was accepting of that. So we kind of impacted that, and that's how it ended up being an oval, trying to stay out of those really too sensitive areas. Moving up the corridor, there's plenty of talk about the access points to what I call the Andes and the Holiday block. There was a couple scenarios. We worked with Jonathan and the Cross Lakers to get some green space in there and increase some parking. Those turned out not to be feasible, and we also thought that closing the most southerly one, that one right there, would actually create some traffic snarls, both in the parking lot and on the road. We need those access points to be efficient so they're not backing up into those, in and out of those. So 4 access points. You'll also notice a turn lane that serves all 4 of those, all the way up to Swan Drive. Maybe going back just a tiny bit, back to the green space at the roundabout farther there. You can see that modification right there in the corner. We introduced some green space. Again, this was something that came from the Cross Lakers, and it turned out that we did the best we could to increase some green space there. That'll be a nice amenity to kind of spruce up that area. That did cost us a few parking spots, but it was something, it's a trade-off. It's going to really clean up that intersection right there. All right, now just in general, on County Road 66 going up the corridor, we're basically redoing the trail on the west side. That'll all be brand new trail on that side, all brand new curb and gutter on that side. And then if you go on the other side, of course, we're talking about the sidewalks all the way up from Swan Drive, all the way up to Bald Eagle will be a sidewalk, concrete sidewalk. And that was, we were able to do that without a lot of impact to private property by the decision you made to allow the consumption of the parking lane on the east side. Throughout the corridor, there's 3 RRFBs. These are the pedestrian flashers, similar or exactly the same as what you have out there today. There's one that's at Echo. There's one at Swan Drive, there's one at Echo, and there's one at Bald Eagle. These are the pedestrian actuated flashers, just like out here.
What are the square boxes there, Jim?
Square boxes, that's entrance. It's kind of a generic entrance point.
Oh, I see.
Yep. Some of them on the other, those are where the access points are. Okay. And then now you're bouncing around, but you're doing a great job. Swan Drive, so one of the latest decisions was to introduce the truck loading zone on Swan Drive. And that's the clunkiness of the, yeah, there you go. And then we also introduced a sidewalk from that loading zone up to their existing sidewalk network. And we're still, due to some vacations and stuff by Mike and then some of our staff, we still are working with them on right-of-way that might look like, why are you going at a right angle? That seems crazy, right? But it's because of ADA standards, so Americans with Disabilities Act. Their slopes are very specific, and to get the proper slopes, to get back to that network, it has to take that right angle like that. You can't just go straight uphill. And we thought, we wanted to make sure that within our right-of-way and your right-of-way actually will end up that it does meet ADA standards. So rather than pay them to put in a sidewalk, we'll likely ask them to construct this so it's built to the federal standard. Okay. And then now I'm moving back over, now I'm going up back to the roundabout, I think. And then going up the CSAH 3 corridor. All of those accesses remain. Judy's, that one was, you'd scoot up just a tiny bit. Judy's. Yeah, we consolidated one, the very westerly one on Judy's. And that, I know that they're working on some additional parking, and that might actually help them, so. That one, right. Yep, see, there used to be 3 access points there, and now there's 2. Those 2, yep. And then moving up to the intersection. Like before that, there's going to be a trail all the way from the roundabout all the way up to connect to the trail by the senior living center. And so that's going to be a nice to close that gap for people using that system. We also, this is one of our later adds, is left turn lanes at 37. Currently there are none there. We thought it was important, the traffic patterns may change a little bit. It might be important for some of our staging too. And it's, as long as we're there, we wanted to get that amenity in there, people going under 37 and then Pioneer. So that was one of our late things. We had to go back a little bit on our environmental documentation and get that right and add this. And then we're, on that north side, we're introducing curb and gutter all the way from the roundabout up to Pioneer. And we needed to do that to be able to get that sidewalk in there and not having such a slope that it fills in that drainage area there. So we use it to conserve space, to minimize impacts, to kind of keep it within the right of way. Throughout that whole section right there, there will not be enough shoulder to park on, and we'll get to that in the city actions thing, where we're asking for a no parking resolution. I think it goes from 8 feet to 6 feet. And you won't be able to physically park on there. The minimum is 8 feet for parking. And then we have water quality items throughout the project. There's some rain gardens and things in the southeast corner of the roundabout. We've introduced some more water quality items you're probably familiar with, these hydrodynamic separators. It helps get the solids out of the water before it enters the water, like the river, and a couple other things along the corridor. We're rehabbing the pond that's on the Corps of Engineer campground that Corrine hates. And I'm pretty sure she hates it. So we're gonna rehab that too. And those are some of the water quality items. So that's just a real quick overview of some of the major components. Do you have any, did I miss anything? Major components? A lot of the, we've been asking for your decisions along the way, and I think we've incorporated them. We've taken a step back and looked at a couple ideas and incorporated where we could and where it made sense. Okay. Now the next part is the cost summary. Do I have that right? Cost summary. So the components are the major components, and they kind of align with what is in the cost share agreement in that attachment A. And it's really the intersection, which is all county. We're paying for the whole intersection with the help of some grants. The CSAH 3 and CSAH 66 roadway and storm sewer improvements, because we're going to take the opportunity to replace 50-year-old storm sewer. And the road, that's all the county cost. And then there's some city infrastructure improvements to Swan Drive. We just talked about that, the truck loading, the parking lot enhancements there. And then also there was a request for some sanitary sewer near the administrative building to, I don't know if it was a plugged line or something like that. Just a new line, sanitary hookup at the core, near the administration building and coming across 66. And then the aesthetic, that was all city infrastructure. Aesthetics is all city cost. The water quality improvements, I talked about a few of those just a few minutes ago. It's shared between the city and the county. Of course, we'd gotten $300,000 from the SWCD and Bowser to build those, but there's some residual left over that was not covered. And then the construction incentive, we've talked about utilizing that together, and we're proposing the 50-50 split. And that might be something new for you. We've been talking about the incentive, but we didn't figure out how we were going to split the cost. We feel there's equal benefit to both the city and the county to help the contractor along with the timeline. And then the engineering cost to do all of this, you can't, engineering is quite expensive, and we're sharing that cost too with the city. So here are now the numbers, just high-level numbers. There's much more detail in attachment A. I have a snapshot of it, but the total project cost is $5.58 million. That includes the construction and the engineering. So it's all said and done. The grants covered 1.81, which equals 32% of the overall project cost. The county's cost, all of those are just over $3 million at 55% of the whole project. And then the city cost is at $695,511, and that represents 13% of the project cost.
And Tim, that's sidewalks, roundabout, that's lighting?
That's
upgrades,
everything,
it's everything.
lighting, that's the engineering too.
Yeah.
that we talked about. And the incentive.
And the incentive.
Yep. We have, it doesn't include the right-of-way, the county's buying all the right-of-way, even the stuff that, on Swan, that really supports the city improvements. We just took that on, and we're not proposing to split that. It's not really expensive. We're still working through a few. We have 8 properties that we're working with. We have 4 completed, and we're still working with the school, and we're working with Holiday, and we're working with a few others, so that's the high-level
And the
cost.
county is going to pay for the whole project, and then after it's all done, you're going to give the city a bill.
Yes, that's how we normally do it, especially with federal money and all these different funding sources. We will upfront the cost and then make the adjustments and then invoice you late in 2024. It might even be into 2025. So as you're looking at your budgets, I know that in the 2024 budgets, it's $750,000, but it actually, depending on the timing of our invoicing, it might actually incur in 2025, because it will take a while to get all the projects finalized. We have to do a bunch of paperwork afterwards. It's federal money, so we'll get audited
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
What's the
Tim,
next?
is there any funds left in there or accounted for change orders come in from time to time? What is that? Is there any estimate in here for any of that?
There's still a 5% contingency on it. So when you start off at about 20, a year out, and as you get closer and the design gets much more detailed, you're more confident about the things, but you're likely to run into something that you don't find. So we leave a contingency in there, it's 5%. So your cost includes a 5%. If everything goes perfect, there's no change orders, it might be 5% less.
Yeah, that won't happen.
It probably won't. I mentioned it in the details of the cost share policy that you have in your packet. It talks about, these are estimates. These are not based on actual bids. And it could come in higher, they could come in lower, but we will adjust based on that. So right now, it's $695, $511, but if we get bituminous cheaper, for example, and nothing else goes up, all of our costs will go down, and we'll adjust that to reflect the actual bids. They could come up too. If they get way out of whack, then before we accept the bids, we'll be talking.
So these are engineer estimates.
These are estimates. We don't have a bid yet, and this is the only way to do it until we get a contractor to say what it's going to cost.
So you have the incentive max at 50,000. You're saying the city's part is 50,000?
Yes.
No, it's 100 total.
It's 100 total, 50/50, so 50,000 max. And I say max because they may not make it, and we're not going to pay them. So that's why I say max.
Yeah, I thought we had talked about it once before, and we were looking at 50,000 total. Maybe I'm mistaken, but
Well, I think that's what we started at the roundabout there. We were talking at the office about this one's much more sensitive. I know there's people in the crowd, it's very sensitive, and we're trying to do everything we can.
Yeah, the 100 is good. What is the time window, though, that you're going to give them?
Steve's gonna come up and talk a little bit about the construction staging and what we're thinking about, detours and things like that. And we wouldn't mind hearing about where to apply the incentive. So there's 2 phases, and I don't wanna steal his thunder, but there's 2 phases. We could say 50,000 to get this one done, and 50,000 to get this one done. But if you decide that this one's much more important, we might go, 75 is on this one. You know what I mean? It's just what's available to us. And
So from Swan North is actually more important to us
It could
because
be.
there isn't going to be a roundabout, so.
we want to.
But we'll talk about that.
so that 750,000 that we budgeted for, did that include the 50,000 incentive, or did it include 25,000?
I don't think
I don't think it was broken down.
Yeah, I don't think it.
when that number was developed, it was over a year ago, I think, that
Yeah.
we weren't really, we hadn't even use our first incentive, or we use our first one at the county down at the intersection down here. So it probably doesn't. To answer your question, it probably doesn't.
Okay.
It wasn't included because we weren't talking about incentives at the time.
Incentives then.
You need to know that before the bid packs go out, where the incentive is gonna be split?
Well, it's part of the contract documents. We have to tell,
So, yeah, it's
we
gotta
have
be
to tell
part of
the
documents.
contractor because then they'll bid it appropriately. And we'll come up with an idea of how we think it should go, but we've talked about allowing the contractor to give us some ideas. We might get a contractor we've never seen before that have an army of men and women to come build this thing, and they might get it done sooner. But we have to have an idea so everybody's bidding the same way.
Is it a two-phase project, though? Are they gonna get the roundabout pretty much done and then move up to the second phase?
Well, let Steve, I don't want to steal all his thunder. He's itching at the bit, yeah.
Okay.
And then so here's the breakdown by component, and I have a construction cost and an engineering cost in there too. And so the county-only components obviously is zero. That's how that breaks down in construction and engineering. And then the next slide is the very detailed, how the grants were applied. And that was a science project, I'll tell you, to kind of how to make all the grants so you could tell what was your final cost after realizing some of the grants. The grants were applied in the same manner as the cost participation policy. And so it was an 80-20 grant, but you didn't have that percentage of the construction. So you get 80% of the city's responsibility covered. And we had responsibility on that too. And it's detailed in that graphic right there. Okay? Oh, I will point out, I have a lot of reviewers that actually, this is actually a copy of attachment A in your agreement. The agreement that I sent Shar on Friday, we did some reviewing over the weekend, and Phil pointed out a few things. There's a couple, the bottom line number didn't change. I just had a few errors up in here. So if you might not even notice them because there's so much in there. The bottom line didn't change. Okay. Any questions before I turn it over to Steve?
Let us at them.
Push. All right.
Good evening, council, and thank you for having me tonight. So I'd like to bring you up to speed on our construction phasing and our detour plan for this project. As Tim said, this project will be broke down into 2 different phases. We feel that's the best way to minimize the impact of the community and shorten the amount of time the detours are in place. Each phase will be offered a construction incentive, and we'll determine what percentage that is with the help of your input. With a total of up to $100,000 for the incentive. I'll have you flip to the next page. The next page shows our phase 1 construction in red. So we're proposing phase 1 be the roundabout. You can see the closure limits are from the bridge on CSAH 3 up to Swan Drive. The detour for that would utilize CSAH 36, CSAH 37, and Swan Drive. And that would allow folks to access the city of Cross Lake from the south, going all the way through up to 66. So traffic should not be impeded, except for on CSAH 3. We anticipate this section of road would take about 8 weeks to build. If you flip to the next page, we have our business access plan, and that shows a little bit more detail on where the closure is and how we're going to move traffic around in the city. So the key area I want you to focus on first would be the area that we have highlighted in orange. This piece of roadway is actually 4 lanes wide, and so we feel we can build this under construction. We can have traffic on that segment while we're building it. And so if you look at the detour, which is in blue, we can essentially route traffic up using Pioneer Drive to Swan Drive, and then bring traffic down into our construction project and get them into the Holiday Station and some of those local businesses, even all the way down to Andy's. And also leave the access open just south of Andy's, so we can access County Road 3. So I think that's a key component to keeping traffic circulating through the city. The other kind of strange thing we gotta put up some signage is the access for the Army Corps and the Historic Village will actually come up 3 into the closure from the south. And so that'll be the only traffic that crosses the bridge. And that's where Tim was showing the temporary access road. And so that's our phase 1 construction. Everything you see in red, 8 weeks to construct.
So, Steve, when you say 8 weeks, does that take you up 3 past Pioneer? Is that part of the 8 weeks?
Everything in blue is a detour route.
Yeah, but
Everything in red and potentially orange could be done in stage 1.
what is green on the map here is
Green are just
3.
our county road system.
Yeah, but you're gonna be reconstructing part of that,
Yep, that'll be on 3, that'll be part of phase 2 construction.
phase 2.
Yep.
Okay.
So if we flip the page, and I apologize, the handouts are incorrect, but the map up here on the TV is correct, so if you
The
could
map's
focus.
correct, and then I gave a separate handout with just the detours in the phase, yes, so those are correct, so he's on phase 2.
So if I could focus your attention up here to the screens, for those in the audience. Phase 2 detour, and we'll get a little closer view of this. But this is the phase 2 construction is everything you see in red. So it's the CSAH 3 eastern leg leading up to the roundabout, and it is the section of road between Swan Drive and Bald Eagle Drive, including the improvements on Swan itself. The detour is lengthy. It's about 15 miles. It takes 22 minutes. You can see the detour we're using is CSAH 16 to 39 to 103. It's important to us to minimize the construction on phase 2 because we know this is a long detour. If we jump to the next screen, it's a zoomed in picture of our business access plan in this area. And this one took a lot to think about and try to get it right. At this point, the roundabout's going to be open, and everything should be open on 66 up to Swan. The stretch of Swan that's in orange, we're going to build that under construction as well. And so that'll allow us to circulate traffic up 3 through the city, the downtown area of Cross Lake, utilize Pioneer Drive and Swan Drive. CSAH 3 itself, the red area, will be closed to through traffic. When I say that, it is open to the residents getting to the businesses. At all times, we're going to allow access to the businesses, and we'll sign it appropriately. We just don't allow traffic to drive through the project. And so we'll utilize Swan to try to push that traffic off of 3.
But it can drive through it from the south and from the north.
That would be my intent. So there may be times where we have to close that intersection to grade through there or to run storm sewer, but it might be a day here or there, and we'll talk about some project updates coming up. But for the majority of the time, I'd like to leave that intersection open. And Swan is another one of those intersections that's very similar, right? There's going to be construction there, and there'll be days where we may have to take it offline and close traffic, but our intent is to keep it open as much as possible. And then you could see the real problematic closure is the one between Swan and Bald Eagle Drive. There's no great way to get traffic around that area. It's a narrow area, so we can't build it under traffic. And we still have to, during construction, get traffic to the post office, to the church, to the local businesses.
But the trail on the west side of the road is being removed and replaced,
That's correct,
and the gutter is being removed and replaced, the curb and gutter.
correct. Because of the storm sewer installation along that side of the road.
So that does widen the pad out.
It does, yep. So our construction timeline for these 2 segments, for segment 2, or phase 2, excuse me, is 6 weeks. And now, our goal with the incentives is to push that so that we can reduce those timelines. We expect the roundabout to be constructed in 8 weeks. We expect this piece to be built in 6 weeks. And so the incentive will help reduce that timeline. I just want to mention, with every reconstruction project, no matter where it is, and every one I've ever been on, there are impacts. There are impacts to businesses. There are impact to the traveling public, and this project will be no exception. Our goal here is to minimize those impacts as much as possible. And so some of the other efforts we put into this to minimize the detour route lengths and to minimize the construction season, we're going to require the contractor to do a 6-day work week. The hours that they typically work are 7 to 7. And in our contract, we're going to include an option for night work. And it's not that we're going to allow the option for night work. And so with that, the option is there for the contractor to propose to us problematic areas where there could be heavy traffic or pedestrian traffic or time restrictions, constraints, where they think they could do some night work to minimize the time it takes to do this project. We'll bring those obviously to the county engineer for review, to the city for review, and we'll review and approve essentially. But I think it gives us another opportunity to reduce the impacts at some of these major intersections where there's storm sewer crossings. And it also gives us an opportunity to reduce the time constraints on the project.
You guys don't have any deep digs on this road at all?
I think there's some deep digs on the storm sewer line. Yeah, 10, 12 feet. And there's some good sized
That's gotta be
pipes.
dewatered then, probably?
So if you think,
Yeah.
so if you think about running the main line, it's a straight shot right up 66, and it's deep, but the contractors can do that. Where we really have to close these roads down and restrict traffic is when they do the crossings. And so I'm looking at Swan, there's a couple crossings in that area that could maybe potentially impact traffic for a day or two. And there might be some on 3 itself, maybe closer to Andy's Bar. And so those are the things that we want to, maybe we could use night work to reduce those impacts. But that's something we'll review.
How many bidders you guys have, are you gonna send it to, do you know yet?
Well, we put it out for bids and then any contractor can bid on it.
Could get it.
Typically, what we've been seeing for roundabout projects is anywhere from 7 to 8 contractors. But this is a double the cost of most of our roundabouts we've done. So I would expect it to bring in a lot of bidders.
Steve wasn't around last summer, was he?
I've heard stories.
It's just, I can't express how critical it is to try to keep that road as open as we can. And I get your red line means closed road, but
Well, looking
Well-
at it, I think that phase 2 is where we should throw our incentive money.
well, yeah, majority of it, yeah.
Well, I tell you,
Totally agree with you.
66 open.
I will tell you, every one of these projects start with red lines on paper, but it's not realistically what happens in the field, so. But we gotta do our best to get traffic in and out of these businesses. We can't shut the post office off, can't shut down the school. Traffic will get there, and we'll do our best to get them around.
What's the timeline?
4,
Yeah,
start date, June 1st.
March 25th, is that what I heard you say?
We have an opportunity,
That doesn't happen.
if we can get plans approved through the state of Minnesota, to get this going earlier in May, closer to the beginning of May. If the environmental reviews don't get back on time, if the reviews through the state don't get back on time for the plans, it will likely be a June 1st start date. We don't have a lot of control over that at this point. Tim's doing his best to work on the state officials to get the plan approved, get the environmental documentation approved. These guys are working. And so we understand the earlier we can get after it, the better. And we're shooting for the earlier date.
I just a reminder, this is federal money, and federal money comes with a lot of more hoops to jump through, and we're not the only federal project in Minnesota. And so MnDOT, actually, representatives review all the federal plans. And so we're in line behind a number of those, and it happens every year. I think we're really close to state aid review being completed, and then we'll incorporate their comments and then be able to ship it off to the feds. There's a lot of other paperwork that has to line up. One of the things I'm asking for tonight is municipal consent, that it can't be reviewed fully until we have that approval. So it is a little bit beyond our control. I can tell you I'm calling some of my former colleagues to see if we can, I'm doing what I can.
So the quicker we get it in, the better.
That's right. We've had a couple delays because of some of the alternatives that we looked at. We had to stop Andrew working on some of the other stuff and actually do some environmental review on like the loading area. We took a couple weeks to probably look at the turn lane to the school, and that created some delays for the design team and things like that. So it's all.
You know what I'm thinking, Tim. Right?
No.
No?
Do you
No,
have
I
to
don't know
know-
what you're thinking.
Do you have to know where we want to throw the incentive at tonight?
We'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because we will have to write the proposal too. So we have the plan, of course, and then you have basically the instructions, how to bid and then build the project. They need to know where the incentive is so they can know if they can meet the timelines or not, or if it's worth it.
So what would happen if we threw all of our incentive at the phase 2 and not phase 1? No?
I think you can't start phase 2 until you start phase 1. And so I think I would not let phase 1 off the hook, because the sooner you get that done, the sooner you can get on phase 2. So they are tied. I mean, that might be an argument for 50-50, but we would love to hear your input.
So to clarify what you said was, you can't start phase 2 until phase 1 is complete, meaning fully marked.
Blacktop, hard surface, you mean?
Everything,
Yeah.
on phase 1.
Not even significant completion.
I gotta
This
ask,
is-
why is that? Why wouldn't you do the final overlay on the whole project when it's done or something?
It's very difficult to get the paver through the roundabout, especially with traffic. They're difficult to pave in general. And then for safety reasons, we want to have that striping down.
Had all these discussions internally.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll completely open it to traffic, and then it becomes part of our detour system for phase 2.
Going to bring just one thing that we didn't talk about, and it's probably obvious to many out there, is West Shore Drive. How did West Shore Drive work last time? I know it was long, but I mean, did you hear from the residents out there upset about traffic going by there? Should we be considering West Shore Drive as part of the detour?
Well, once we set the detour, we should stick with it. That cost us more for signage and everything else, and it was an additional $8,000
Well-
because we changed the detour. So whatever we decide, we need to go with it.
Yeah, and I guess my point is that we can still talk about, there's still time to fix that up. I think people will find it anyway.
I was just gonna say, let them find it.
We put up, last time we had the same detour you do.
Oh, okay.
We put up signs on West Shore, trying to dissuade people from using it as a detour. But I'm sure they still
Okay.
did to some degree. I don't know what the results were, if you heard that in terms of that.
I really can't recall either. I heard more about behind Fire Hall, you know.
Yeah.
I went on Google Maps before the meeting tonight, and it's 3 minutes shorter to take West Shore Drive. It's
So-
19, Google Maps says 19 minutes. Our detour route says 22.
There are a lot more accesses, there's a lot more people along
Slower.
West Shore on
I'm sure
bikes,
the speed.
a lot more entrances, places for kids. I would,
Keep it on 16.
Any other questions on the staging?
How can we expedite this so we can start it sooner? How can we do that? I mean, look at the winter we've had. You know, there's no snow, there's no frost, there's no nothing.
it's as they're saying.
Pushing it through the
These are
state.
federal dollars. You want to have $1.8 million come in federal dollars. That's what we're stuck with. We're waiting on federal lands, a de minimis statement where we're basically not making impact. We're waiting for someone at the top to sign the forms that they've had in front of them for over 2 months. And that's a necessary step. Just like what you can control tonight is your municipal consent. If you don't give municipal consent, if you kick it for 2 more weeks, well, you know what we're facing. We can't even get the state aid to review our plans unless they have that checked off their list that you've given municipal consent. Then they'll start to review them. So
The only thing I could say is, I'm calling the people I know how to call, but people just in my position all over the state are doing the same thing, because their project is a number one too. And so I'm not the only call saying, please bring it to the top. But that's what I can commit to doing. That's the only thing.
So are we ready to adopt the resolution approving the project within the city
I
corporate
am, but if it
limits?
starts June 1st, it's going to finish September 15th, and it's going to be the whole season.
Is there a way that we can get the money now and sit on it for another year? Or obviously things are going to increase, so that's a stupid idea.
It'll
but-
be the same thing next year.
I mean, if we have the money, could we start earlier if we?
Yeah, I don't recommend that.
Yeah, okay.
Because you might
That was
lose the
just an
money.
idea.
I think the environmental work might time out and you got to do all over again. It's just one of those things. We've been trying to hurry up. It has been miraculous that we've gotten to this point. It's a 5-year project development crammed into 2 short years. And what happens is this at the end. We're ready to build it. The
not
weather's
even
ready to
been-
build it, and the paperwork's not done.
we didn't start until August. It was not even, it's not even 2 years.
Oh, yeah, not even,
mean,
August of
it's-
2022, right? So,
I think the thing of it is we need to consider is we should see to it that we're not a roadblock, them getting started as early as possible.
So do we have any more questions? Can I make the motion to adopt the resolution approving the county project within the city of Cross Lakes corporate limits?
I'm sorry, Marcia, are you on number 4? Is that the one you're on?
Yep, yes. it
I'll
is.
second that motion.
so, which is number 4? Right to the bottom one. For the 695, 511? Is that what you're?
Well, it's
Oh. Is that-
resolution approving county project within municipal corporate limits.
Oh, I don't know, it's number 4. This one is, oh, I'm sorry, yes, municipal consent, I'm sorry. Municipal consent resolution is it's approving the project. That doesn't mean that there aren't small little things, we have some things that we want to work on, but we have to have this moving forward. The general idea of the project you support. Yes, we need to figure out how to construct it and minimize all those things. I think even during the construction, we'll be continuing to tinker with that to do the best we can. What you're approving with the municipal consent is not even the cost, because the cost share agreement is completely separate. This is, you support the general idea of this project that is represented in this layout. Go do this, continue your work at the state and federal level to get this approved without this being a roadblock.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second on that? Is that true? Go ahead, Shar.
Aaron,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes,
Can you put her back on the screen? Sandy?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Dave? Motion carries.
Thank you. Let's see, the next one, I don't know what order we're in. Let's go with the no parking resolution. And I know that Jake is not here tonight. Yeah, so we need a no parking resolution to officially designate no parking in the areas, believe it or not, it will be impossible to park. And those are listed there. So CASA 3 from the west side between the bridge all the way up to 66, that's on the west side. And then, because there is a little part on the east side that's just a little bit south of the entrance to the historic village, that there will still remain some parking there. That was important to them, and it didn't affect the function of the roundabout, so we left that in. CASA 3 on both sides between the junction of 66 and 37.
Are these full-time permanent no parking
These are
now, or
permanent, will be
permanent?
signed.
Okay, yep.
And so that's all the way from Andy's, all the way, both sides, all the way up. Like I said, to the, I'd say northeast of the Judy's old House of Gifts, that shoulder is going to be narrowed to 6 feet, and it will be physically impossible to park there. So we're asking for that. And then on CASA 66 on both sides between the roundabout and Swan Drive. So this is, it's basically, there's no parking now. It's right in front of Holiday, nobody wants to park. And then on the east side between Swan Drive and Bald Eagle Drive, all the way on the east side, that's the decision that you made that kind of got us to this point right now. And so making that official. I know that the police chief has been reaching out to some of our staff, and there's another conversation that needs to take place about some of the other city desires. I'd like to save that for another time. We actually talked as a staff, and we would need to be pretty thoughtful about that. So we're
the
just talking
impact-
about these today.
The Lutheran Church will no longer park on the road.
It'll be,
Right, I mean,
This is
that's a big impact.
this is how the shoulder will be. Yep. It will be it will correct.
Oh, there is?
Thank you.
Oh, I thought it was both sides going.
Nope, just on the
Okay.
bottom bullet, just on the east side.
I make a motion that we approve the resolution restricting parking on County State Aid Highway, CASA 3 and CASA 66, as outlined here.
I'll second that.
Okay, sure.
Sandy?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Dave?
Yep,
Aaron?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And the last request of council action is the cost share agreement. That's about the 9-page agreement that is very detailed on some of the reasoning why some of those costs are there. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't want to go through it. The bottom line is $695, $511 as the county's, or pardon me, the city's share for engineering and construction. And the details are in attachment E.
So I'm going to add to this, because on this project, we wore two hats. We assisted the county with the design, and then we also assist you as a city engineer. So I've reviewed these numbers. Andy and I have been very deep in the weeds on these numbers. So these numbers come from the county's cost share policy. They also come from past agreements the city has with the county. You know, one of them being your trail along 66 it's your trail. You know, under some cases, if the county were doing work adjacent to a trail that didn't have that agreement in place, there would be more cost to the county. But we've looked at this from not necessarily opposing the county, but trying to say, hey, what should the city's cost be relative to this? I think our comment would be is the county is being exceedingly fair with the city. There are components they're taking on that they probably could argue should be the cities in the area. Curb and gutter along Andy's parking lot and stuff, they could argue that's the cities, but they're taking the standpoint, we want to say this is part of the intersection. This is where the we separate the projects. And so we are gaining benefit, in my estimation, on costs and how they are attributing this. So kudos to the county for, I think, treating the city very fairly. Second thing, Patrick, when you're reviewing this, there are a couple of items that you do take on some maintenance as the city. I think they're very fair.
Yeah.
But there are aspects of this that are continued maintenance. And the county is continuing maintenance as well. So anyway, very good, I think, outcome. This project just went from, when we put a proposal together, we estimated it was a $2.3 million project. And it's 5.45 right now. So that's my comments.
Yeah, the number, I mean, the number certainly went up from when we first started, but once we got into it, we realized, boy, we need to reconstruct this road. We're not going to build this beautiful pedestrian facility and leave the road in tough shape, and the storm sewer 50 years old. It kind of creeped on us. I still have to answer to my commissioner about the higher cost about that. But it has been, good dialogue. I mean, again, I can't say enough about how hard these guys worked and how mad I made them about my being a perfectionist. And probably not done, guys, but, so.
I'll make a motion that we approve the construction cost share and maintenance agreement between Crow Wing County, Minnesota and the city of Cross Lake, Minnesota for County State Aid Highway CSAH 66 and CSAH 3 intersection pedestrian stormwater improvements, Crow Wing County project, number 018-090-008, and our estimated cost at this point is $695,511.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, sure.
Jackson,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes,
Marcia.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And the last thing I have is the next one. So there's a handout that the residents got, and also it's this one. It's in your packet and a separate. So we had a lot of really good success on a project this year. The county has an alert program, system. Think about the tornado warnings and things. It's called Everbridge. Thank you, Chip. Law enforcement, fire, and EMS use it to make people aware. The first thing that comes to mind is tornadoes and fires and things like that. We started to leverage it last year and allow people to sign up to get up-to-date, real-time updates from the project team. And so we use it down on County Road 115 that goes around Round Lake. And that was a very residential area. We had to maintain access to all those people using their lake homes and that stuff like that. So we allowed them to sign up. They would get a text on their phone about when the road was open or where it was going to be closed and things like that. And we've already set it up for this project too, because it'll be important not only to your guests, but businesses and residents. And so we set up a QR code to a couple small steps to sign up for that. You can follow that. And I think we'll start maybe doing some testing or even some updates within the next couple weeks, maybe, just saying municipal consent was granted or something like that to try to get people. So I know that we've made a social media version of this that we can share with the chamber and the city and to try to get it out far and wide so people can sign up for these. Our plan is to get to the Corps of Engineers so they have a big, long mailing list that they can mail it to their guests that frequent their facility too.
I have one last question. Tim, have you and Chip worked at all together to communicate? Okay, I think somebody needs to be communicating with our fire department, okay?
About access, about being able to serve
Yeah,
this.
so how they, yeah. I mean, to get to a fire is a big deal for us.
I have a guy on staff that's also on your staff that could probably work together to help us figure it out.
However, but I'm just saying, please work together so we
Absolutely.
can.
EMS is
Yeah.
Certainly important, be able to get access to
Yeah,
the people
because that
in need.
includes our ambulance.
So you can't bid the project until the state signs off, or the federal,
No,
all those signatures get, so we can't even say we'll bid it in March.
we can't, honestly. That's always been the goal, is to bid it in March. It feels like May, but it is only February. And so I had to keep reminding myself, we have, 2 months before we can even
We need to determine where we're
construct.
throwing the money.
Yep, yep.
So Tim and Phil, I got a couple comments. Is there any way that we could switch the phases? Put phase 1 up on the north end, and that is out of the grant money, other than the sidewalks? Is there any way we can
It's
juggle
all
anything?
federal money, every inch of it is covered. It's a federal project, you can't,
Even the north face is?
everything.
You've got the campground there.
How do we want to split our incentive? Do we want to just split it down the center, or do we want to go 20, 30? What do we want to do?
We should offer part of it to these guys to get it going sooner.
Well, that's not going to happen.
I don't need that to try to move it up, trust me.
So
Well-
there's nothing we can do.
This sucks.
Do you suggest just splitting it, 25, 25, or since, I just think phase 2 is going to hurt us more than phase 1. I'd rather go
Well-
20 for phase 1 and
Absolutely.
30 for phase 2. And you can tell me you're dead wrong. I don't care.
Honestly, I don't know. There are businesses on phase 1 too that want it done sooner.
I've thought about this a little bit, and if we were to start, worst case scenario, we start June 1st, 8 weeks, we finish phase 1 right before the 4th of July, have the roundabout open for the 4th of July weekend. Makes a lot of sense.
That's only 4.5 weeks from June 1st.
Oh, sorry, my math is off. I stand corrected.
We were talking about early May at the office.
So there is an opportunity to do it earlier if we get an early bid date. I apologize for that.
Well, let me just, you brought up a good question I want you to answer, Steve, is why not do phase 1 first? And we kind of talked about that. And it has to do with just building storm sewer, going uphill and down, right?
Yeah, correct. So where the storm sewer outlet is at the bridge, we got a 36-inch storm sewer, and we have to build the downstream before we build the upstream. In an ideal world, it would have been great to close that phase 2 area first, get the hard impact out of the way, then the easy part, it would be the roundabout. It's not gonna work.
What's the window to qualify to get the incentive done before the completion date? 1, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? What's the barrier? Or what's the constraints?
Well, we could go with a completion date. It could be open to traffic. It could be substantially complete. We need to kind of figure that out. That's something that we're still wrestling with. We want to know, get some input from you on which percentage you would want to put on there.
Do it 50/50, that way they don't drag their feet on either one.
Are you interested?
That's not what we're going for.
So another thing, we want to be able to put together a project that is possible. I would love to say, hey, you have to have everything done by the 4th of July, but we're going to pay a lot more. We might not get any bidders. So I want to challenge them to start with the beginning of September. When I told it to my staff, they're like, that isn't.
Did I recall you saying earlier that everything has to be completed before they even drive on it? So we couldn't say or half completion or whatever, it has to be fully completed before people can drive on it? So it couldn't even be substantial completion, they get their incentive, people could drive.
We'll have to look at that, because it's the detour that's really the restrictive part. So I know that there's a lot to do about that on the north part, and we'll have to talk about that. So Phil, will you please represent the interests of the city, and let's figure out what that looks like and continue to gather their input.
Can't you build it in winter?
No, I've heard that, but
when are the documents going to go out to bid? I mean, this is another concern I have. You don't know.
it's a valid, absolutely, Mr. Mayor, it's a valid concern. We don't know.
So how do we know that the best contractors are going to be booked up? Can you do a pre-bid or
don't.
something to get somebody, I mean, we're going to lose the season that way.
I've thought about that. Pre-bid was like pre-bid meeting is what he's talking about, to just drum up some interest for it without anybody committing to
I
it.
mean, if you're not out till April or May, the guys are going to have their schedule
I
booked.
understand.
And then we don't want to get somebody that's going to just fill it in, because we went
agree.
through that last year.
I agree, because that's the standing rule at our office, that we get stuff out. And when we have 5 years to develop a project like this, we would definitely be bidding and
I understand that, Tim.
right now. And
You
we're
know,
just
last
not.
fall, when we were trying to move this along, we said, let's try to get an early start, and, you know, that wasn't, the impact wasn't very serious, but that's not going to happen.
Can you do a pre-bid meeting? And
Oh, we can
let
talk
them know
about
that we're
that,
going to bid this and,
get people interested
Yeah.
and see, and maybe they'll hold, it's like, we really want this, and
We'd almost have to award the bid for somebody to hold a slot for it. You'd have to let the
Right.
bid out,
right.
and just let it out contingent upon getting the paperwork done. I don't know, I got a feeling we're
Can't do that.
we're gonna.
We won't be able to do that.
This is different than, boy, when the city, when we're fronting the dollars and we're just bonding, we have so much different flexibility and stuff. We still have to follow public, bidding rules if we're over a certain amount, but this is bureaucracy on steroids. Everything is,
I understand that,
can't
Phil,
go
but
until we
I'm
bid.
feeling like this 5-year project that we're getting done in 2 years, now maybe should take 3, because where we're coming in. you know?
understood.
I mean, we're not coming in a good position in any way on this thing. It doesn't look
Well,
like
and I
to me.
think a fair question then is to the county on this, because there are a bunch of things we do not control. But if the federal government doesn't give approvals until June, and now you're bidding in June and July, what would the county's reaction be? Is there a point where it's a point of no return?
There is, I haven't thought about it much, actually. But there probably is a point of no return. Where it doesn't make sense, where now it's gonna be, start this season, have the nightmare over winter, and then have it in the spring again, so. Let's be optimistic about the
I was
point
really
of no
optimistic
return. It's a
coming
good-
into this
It's a good
meeting.
question. Well,
So then the follow-up is, if you're in that situation, would you do a 2-year, a phase in the remainder of one? And I'm
haven't thought about
asking the
it.
question everyone's probably asking out there.
I haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
But if the first phase has got to be completely done, maybe that's what we should do this year. And do the next phase, so we can do it early and do that next year. I mean, it's kind of a pretty clean line. Tim, you remember the impact that had on
I know, but
everybody in
also you're
town.
throwing in the towel right now.
Well,
We could
no,
get
I'm
it
trying to-
and make it this year. I'm not,
trying to explore our options, because I don't feel like we're in control on anything here. As far, there's no time that the bids are going out, we don't know,
your point's valid,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor. I mean,
let's not make a
truly.
decision until we know when the,
I agree with Marcia.
well,
It
and
is.
that's fine, but I
It's-
just want you guys to think real serious about it, because it's a reality. I think the 2-phase in the year 24 and 25 might not be a bad option to split it,
The cost will change.
Understood, but it's, there's pros and cons to what you're saying, and some of the cons are, again, if the timing can happen, it makes a ton of sense to get this thing done this year. One contractor, and not have stuff sit over a construction period. That's not a pleasant thing either, to have, be partly done and then have someone come back in and have to re-go. It means pipes that don't quite go across
I
have to be
totally get it,
tamped.
Phil.
I mean,
You know, there are pros and cons, but there's pros and cons from both sides of the fence,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So,
We'll deal with that when they get their approval back. If it's June,
I
then,
don't want to slow you down, I want you to go ahead and do it, but if the reality comes back that we're not going to start till June 20th, it's going to be a problem.
I haven't thought about the point of no return, but that sounds like a point of no return if we're bidding in June.
Yeah, it bothers me that we're coming out with the bid packet so late that the good contractors are going to be busy. You know, that's a problem. Unless you can give some kind of tie somebody up.
Just keep in mind, it is still February.
Yeah.
It feels like May, but
Yeah.
central Minnesota, call us central, north central, southern Minnesota, they're all building. By the time our project comes out, you might have contractors that have busted through everything they have. You just don't know until.
I know.
we
What I
say-
do know, though, is last year when we talked about last year's project, you said, I like to put the bids out in February.
do, always
So
do.
we're not going to make that deadline. It
Agreed.
puts us late.
It does.
So that's all. Tom,
Can you come up to the
you
microphone?
better come up. And I hope you don't start something here, Tom.
Try to keep it short. You're talking about incentives, but is there also penalty after a substantial, so that it doesn't drag on the way the 66 project did?
It will still have a disincentive or liquidated damages, and I think I've said several times here and other places is that liquidated damages doesn't change the conversation. An incentive does. Instead of figuring out how to wiggle out of disincentives like you lived through, they're trying to figure out, boy, I better work a half day. I better work Saturday. I might want to figure out night work. Those are the conversations that I want to start with an incentive.
And then I had one other question from earlier. On Swan Drive, it looks like you're going partway up Swan Drive on both lanes, and then about to the entrance to the school parking lot on the north side.
Yep.
Why aren't we just, it's more, it'll be a city cost, but I can see all the cracks going across right now. Why don't we just
Bring them
do
up
that?
equal.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, we're looking and maybe.
That's
Phil
pretty
has this
small
off the
potatoes.
top of his head on our 5-year plan, but it seems to me Swan Drive is one of the ones that'll get taken care of, mill and overlay early on in that 5-year plan. And I think it's gonna look kind of goofy to, have new blacktop on one half of the side of the street, and then we come back a few years later and do the other. That's just my thought, but if there's a way of, most contracts, you can add up to 10% or whatever it is to the contract, so that might just be something to look at.
I just hope that I have expressed my concerns about this early on.
Loud and clear.
One quickie. Seen this before, Darrell?
Darrell Swanson, representing Cross Lake Lutheran Church. Hi, guys. I've talked to them a lot. Any chance that this can start the day after Labor Day and do it this fall and get away from the summer? Because this is a disaster waiting to happen.
See,
Don't
then we got
forget,
cold weather, we're fighting that.
that won't work?
No.
Because
This
the
cold
wettest month
weather-
of the year in this part of the country, as you all know, is June. So if this starts June 1 and we finally get the rain, the whole summer's done.
I know.
Okay. Thank you.
It's too bad, we're missing some great weather right now. Okay. Enough said.
Are we doing the motion to adjourn?
I'll second it.
Go ahead, Char.
Aaron,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Marcia,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Motion carries.